Hello everyone. Today inshallah we are going to start solving the problems of chapter number 18. Please open your books on problem 1839. 1839. Who would like to read? Yes, anyone? That's fine, please.
Weighted average method inspection at 80% condition. The current company is furniture manufacturer with two departments, molding and finishing. The company uses the weighted average method of process costing. In August, the following data were recorded for the finished department. Units of beginning work in process inventory 12,500. Percentage completion of beginning work in process units 25%. Cost of direct materials in beginning work in process 0. Units started 87,500. Units completed 62,500. Units
62,500.
Units and ending inventory 25,000. Percentage completion of ending work in process units 95%. Spoiled units 12,500. Total costs added during current period. Direct materials 819,000. Direct manufacturer labor 794,500. Manufacturing overhead 770,000. Work in process beginning. Transferring costs 103,625.
The transferred in, how much, please?
103,625. Conversion cost 52,500.
52,500.
Cost of units transferred in during current period 809,375.
These are the cost of
transferred in during this period.
Transferred in during this period.
Conversion costs are added evenly during the process. Direct material costs are added when production is 90% complete. The inspection point is at the 80% stage of production. Normal spoilage is 10% of all good units that pass inspection. Spoiled units are disposed of at zero net disposal value. For August, summarize total costs to account for and assign these costs to units completed and transferred out, including normal spoilage, to abnormal spoilage, and to units in the ending work process.
Therefore, as we can see here, we have a department, a finishing department, that adds direct materials at the 90% point, and of course the conversion costs evenly on the production process. Also, we need to determine or designate that the inspection point is at the 80% point. Therefore, first of all, we need to, and they gave us, of course, that the normal spoilage is 10%. The normal spoilage is 10% of good units. Therefore, first, or before starting to assign the cost and start with our 5-step procedure, we need first of all to calculate what are the number of units that are considered normal and what are considered as abnormal. Therefore, what do you think we need to do in order to calculate the normal spoilage? Of course, they gave us the 10%, but 10% of good units. Therefore, we need to calculate what are the number of good units in order to multiply that number with the 10% in order to get the normal spoilage. Correct? Of course, we said if we have an inspection point not at the end of the production process, we need to determine according to the different classifications of units. Of course, we have beginning inventory that started in the previous period and finished in this period. We have units that were started and finished in this period, and we have the ending work and in process. And we need to determine whether these classifications or different classifications of units were inspected in this period or not. Therefore, we have, as we can see, the beginning work in process, in units 12,500. We have the started and completed. What would be the number of units that were started and completed in this period? 62,500 are the completed, not started and completed. Yes. According to the question, they gave us that 62,500 were completed. 12,500 were as beginning inventory. Therefore, if we take 12,500 from the 62,500, therefore, that the started and completed units would be 50,000 units, correct? Which is the remaining after deducting the 12,500 as beginning inventory. Therefore, the started and completed would be 50,000. Of course, as we can see here, the 50,000 plus the 12,500 is the 62,500, which are completed. We are not assigning costs. Here, we are not assigning costs. We are only, we need to consider or calculate what is the number of good units in order to know what is the normal spoilage. Therefore, as we can see here, the 62,500, as we are going to see, the beginning inventory were at the 25%, correct? Therefore, at the 25%, they were inspected in this period. Therefore, we need to consider the beginning as a classification and the started and completed as another classification, even if we are using the weighted average in order to assign the costs. The weighted average is used only to assign the costs, correct? Therefore, in determining or calculating what are the number of units that needs to be or that are inspected within this period, in order to calculate the normal spoilage, we need to consider that we have a classification of beginning inventory and another classification that started and completed and another classification of ending inventory. Therefore, as we can see here also, we have an ending inventory, 25,000. Of course, not inventory, but work in process inventory. And of course, we have spoiled as they gave us 12,500. Of course, if they did not give us this amount, the 12,500, can I calculate this amount, the 12,500? Will I be able to calculate that I have spoiled units by the amount of 12,500 units?
Yeah.
How?
10% from 62,500.
These spoiled units are both normal and abnormal. The 10% is only for the normal spoilage. Therefore, as we can see here, we have, excellent, we have 12,500 from the beginning. and we have started 87,500. Therefore, if we add 12,500 with the 87,500, we will get 100,000 units. These are the total number of units to account for. Where did these units go? 62,500 were completed. 25,000 as ending. As we can see here, the 62,500 plus the 25,000 does not equal the 100,000 units. Therefore, the remaining units would or must be spoiled. Therefore, the spoiled units would be 12,500 units. Therefore, even if the question did not give us the total number of spoiled units, whether abnormal or normal, we can calculate them by understanding the physical units. Where did they come from and where did they go? Of course, as we discussed in the previous lectures, if the inspection point is at 80%, we need to determine what are the units that went through the inspection point. Because if the units went through the inspection point, they were deemed to be good, correct? And only the spoiled units were deemed to be spoiled or defective. Therefore, as we can see here, the beginning working process were 25%. That means we worked 25% of the beginning working process in the previous period. Therefore, in this period, we have completed these 12,500 units. We have transferred these units from a 25% of completion to a 100% of completion. Therefore, at the point of 80%, they were inspected in this period, correct? Now, on the other hand, the started and completed, the 50,000 units started and completed within this period. Therefore, they have been inspected in this specific period. The ending or working process, excellent, they are inspected. Why? Because they started in this period and they reached the 95% of completion. Therefore, they were inspected at the 80% point of completion, correct? Therefore, they were also inspected. Therefore, as we can see here, the good units would be the 12,500 plus the 50,000 plus the 25,000. Of course, the spoiled units were also inspected, but they were deemed to be spoiled. Therefore, the good units would be the total of these numbers minus the 12,500, correct? Therefore, as we took in the previous lectures, we said that the inspected units are the 12,500 plus the 50,000 plus the 25,000 plus the 12,500, all inspected within this period, correct? What would be the total of these these numbers? 100,000, I think. From these inspected units, only 12,500 are spoiled. Therefore, the good units would equal 100,000 inspected units minus the spoiled 12,500. Therefore, the good units would equal 87,500. Only to designate a classification, which are the inspected units. And of course, as I said, I can only add these three numbers and I will get the good units directly. Just in order to understand that the spoiled units were also inspected. This is the only point that I'm emphasizing here. Therefore, if we have good units by the amount of 87,500, therefore 10% of the 87,500 units, not dollars, I'm sorry, would be the normal spoilage, correct? Therefore, normal spoilage would be the 87,500 multiplied by 10%, which would equal 8,750 units. And of course, the abnormal spoilage would be the 12,500 units minus the 8,750, which are considered normal. It would be 3,250. $3,750. Therefore, as we can see here, the first thing that we need to do is to calculate or determine what is the normal spoilage and what is the abnormal spoilage. Now, what we are going to do with the normal spoilage? The normal spoilage, consider it as good units, or the costs of these units, which are the 8,750, will be considered as an addition to the cost of the good units, whether they are completed or not. This is the or one point that we have discussed earlier, that do we need to consider or add some of the spoiled or normal spoiled costs or normal spoilage costs onto the ending work in process. We said if the ending work in process were inspected, if they were deemed to be good, therefore they should be allocated some of these costs or some of the normal spoilage costs, correct? Therefore, the cost of the 8,750 will be allocated and divided onto the completed and transferred out and onto the ending work in process. So what do you think would be the number of units that will be considered an addition, or the cost of these units that would be considered an addition to the cost of the completed units? And what would be the amount of costs or the number of units by which the cost of these units will be an addition to the ending work in process? What do you think? Now we need to divide the 8,750 onto two numbers, correct? We need to divide them in order to allocate them either on the completed or the ending working process, correct? Because both are good units. So what do you think? How much completed do we have? Number of units? 62,500. The ending? 25,000. Therefore, 62,500 multiplied by 10%, which is the normal spoilage, would be, because we just said that the 62,500 were inspected in this period, correct? Therefore, and were deemed to be good. Therefore, 62,500 multiplied by 10%, it would be 6,250, correct? And here, the 25,000 were also inspected and were deemed to be good. Therefore, multiplied by 10%, would give us 2,500. Therefore, the cost of 6,250 units will be an addition to the cost of the 62,500 good units, and the cost of the 2,500 spoiled or normal spoiled units would be an addition to the cost of the 25,000 units as ending work in process. Any questions? Of course, as we can see here, the 6,250 and the 2,500, if we add these two up in order for you in the exam, for instance, to make sure that you are making the right calculations or divisions, the addition of these two numbers would most definitely equal the 8,750. Any questions? The 50,000 is the 62,500 that were completed, minus the 12,500 as beginning work in process. Because we know that the completed 62,500 came from either the beginning work in process or which was started in this period, correct? If we have as a number of units 12,500 as beginning and were finished. Therefore, from the 62,500, 12,500 has the origin from the beginning work in process. Therefore, they were not started in this period. Therefore, we deduct this number. What is the remaining? The 50,000 units that we are considering to be started and completed within this period. Any questions? Of course, after this, we need to do our 5-step procedure. Of course, step number 1, we need to consider the physical units or summarize the physical units. Step number 2, we need to calculate the equivalent units. Step number 3, we need to summarize the total cost to account for. And step number 4, to calculate the cost per equivalent unit. And step number 5, the assignment of cost. Of course, now in step number 1, step number 2, and step number 5, we need to consider that the normal spoilage is now not only one classification as we took, but 2 classifications. One which will be added on to the completed and transferred out units, and the other part would be an addition to the ending work in process. Therefore, let us start with step number 1. These are the physical units. We have the work in process beginning. $12,500. Started, of course, during the current period. $87,500. Of course, the total would be 100,000, which are the total units to account for. Now we need to answer the question, where did the 100,000 units go? Therefore, the first would be the good units. Completed and transferred out, 62,500. Normal spoilage on good units completed and transferred out, 6,250. The ending work in process, $25,000. Normal spoilage on good units as an ending work in process, 2,500. Abnormal spoilage is the 3,750 units. As we can see, they need to equal 100,000, which is the same as the 100,000 total units to account for. These are the total units accounted for. As we can see here, the 100,000 equals the 100,000, or the total units to account for should equal the total units accounted for. Now, let us start with the equivalent units, or the calculation of the equivalent units. Of course, we have the transferred in costs, we have the direct materials costs, and we have the conversion costs. Of course, as we can see here, we need to calculate the equivalent units for the 62,500, 6,250, 25,000, 2,500, and the 3,750. That's it. Therefore, the 62,500 were completed. And of course, according to the weighted average, we do not determine whether it was started in the previous period or in this period. Therefore, we are going to calculate the equivalent units for the all work that has been done until or up till this moment. Therefore, as a transferred units, they took 100%. Therefore, 62,500 they took 100% of direct materials, 62,500, and took 100% of conversion cost, 62,500. Of course, the 6,250 as normal spoilage were spoiled units, correct? And they were inspected at the 80%, and they were discovered at the 80%, and they were stopped from continuing the manufacturing or the production process. Therefore, the percentage of completion on the normal spoilage would be at the 80%. Therefore, did they take anything from the direct materials? Nothing from the direct materials, because the direct materials are added at the 90% after the inspection point. Of course, they would have taken 100% of the transferred in costs and only 80% of the conversion costs. Therefore, 6,250 multiplied by 100%, 6,250. Of course, multiplied by 0%, 0. Multiplied by 80% would equal 5,000 units. Now, for the 25,000 units as ending work in process, of course, they stopped at the 95% of completion. Therefore, they took 100% of transferred in, they took 100% of direct materials, and only 95% of the conversion costs. Therefore, $25,000 units, sorry, 100%, therefore 25,000, 100%, therefore 25,000, only 95%, therefore 23,750. Now, for the normal spoilage on the good units from the ending work in process, also as the normal spoilage before, they stopped at the 80% of completion. Therefore, they took 100% of transferred in, they took only 80% of conversion costs, and they did not take anything from the direct materials. Therefore, 2,500 in total here, 0, and 80% multiplied by 2,500, 2,000. For the 3,750, also as a spoiled unit, they stopped at the 80% point. Therefore, 100% transferred in, 0% direct materials, and 80% as conversion cost. Therefore, 3,000 units. Of course, the total units or total equivalent units would be for the transferred in 100,000. For the direct materials, 87,500. For the conversion cost, 96,250. I'm not going to complete this example or this question because we do not have time. I need to start working on some other problems. So as we can see here, we after calculating the equivalent units, we now need to summarize the total cost to account for. Of course, the total cost to account for would be the cost in the beginning work in process and the costs that were added within this period. Therefore, all the costs were given within the question. After this, we would calculate the cost per equivalent unit. Therefore, we would divide the total cost that we have calculated or summarized in step number 3 by these numbers, 100,000, 87,500, and 96,250. And then step number 5, we need to assign the cost. Of course, we need to calculate the cost of the good units that are completed and transferred out. Therefore, we need to calculate the cost of the 62,500 and then add the cost of the 6,250. Because these are the this part is the normal spoilage that is considered part of the cost of the completed and transferred out. And then we need to assign the cost on the abnormal spoilage. And then we need to assign the cost on the ending work in process, the 25,000. And we will add upon the 25,000 or the cost of the 25,000 units, the cost of the 2,500 spoiled units. By this, or by the end of this step, we would have the cost of the the good units that are completed and transferred out, the good units in the ending working process, and the abnormal spoilage. These three things would be the result of step number 5. Now let us consider another question. (1835). Who would like to read, please? Anyone? 1835. Yes.
Crystal clear machine shop is a manufacturer of motorized cars for vacation resorts. Peter Cross, the plant manager of the Crystal Clear, obtains the following information for job 10 in August 2010. A total of 32 units were started and 7 spoiled units were deducted and rejected at final inspection, yielding to 25 good units. The spoilage units were considered to be normal spoilage. Cost assigned prior to the inspection point are $1,450 per unit. The current disposal price of the spoilage units is $230 per unit. When the spoilage is deducted, the spoiled goods are inventoried at $230 per unit.
Yes, what is the requirement? Or the required?
Normal spoilage rate.
Therefore, the first thing, of course, they said that we have 7 units as spoiled from 32 units that were started, of course, which leaves us with 25 units as good units. Therefore, if they need us to calculate the normal spoilage rate, we need to divide the spoiled units, which are deemed to be normal, by the total units that has started, or only the good units. Only the good units, because we said that the normal spoilage, let us say, or the costs of normal spoilage are incurred because of having good units. Therefore, we need to calculate the normal spoilage rate according to the good units. Therefore, the normal spoilage rate would equal 7 units divided by 25 units, which will equal 28%. This is the normal spoilage percentage. Number 2, please.
Prepare the journal entries to record the normal spoilage, assuming the following. A. The spoilage is related to a specific job.
Therefore, if it is normal and related to a specific job, which is job number 10, we said that these costs, or the cost of 1,450 per unit, or the cost of the 7 units in total, were already incurred and were already loaded onto the specific job. Therefore, we need not to do any other or incur any other costs or load any more costs onto the work in process specific to this job. But because we have a disposal value of $230 per unit, these costs, as we said, will decrease the amount of normal spoilage, would decrease the spoilage or the normal spoilage amount within this specific job. Therefore, we need to decrease the cost. Therefore, we need to credit the work in process of job number 10 by $2,030 per spoiled unit. But if we do not have any disposal value, make sure that you understand this point. If we do not have any disposal value, we would do nothing, because the costs are already incurred and the costs are already loaded onto this specific job. We need not to do anything more. But here, because we have a disposal value, these costs should be lowered. These costs should be deducted. Therefore, as we can see here, we need to decrease the cost within the work in process account, which is specific to this job, job number 10. And of course, we need to consider that we have spoiled units with a disposable value, or let us say a saleable value of $230 per unit. Therefore, we need to consider that we have an asset. Therefore, 2A, materials control will be debited. And work in process job number 10 would be credited, of course, by the amount of $230 multiplied by 7 units, which is $1,610. Any questions? Part B, please.
The spoilage is common to all jobs.
What if the spoilage is common to all jobs? Of course, in this case, the cost of the 7 units in total are loaded onto this work in process, which is specific for job number 10. But we are saying that this cost, or these costs of the 7 units that are spoiled, is not only because of this job, but because of all the jobs. Therefore, in this case, we need to take these costs out from the work in process job number 10 and load it onto the manufacturing overhead, which is then prorated onto all the jobs that we have within a specific period. Therefore, the work in process would be credited, of course, by the amount of $1,450 multiplied by 7 units, and the manufacturing overhead would be debited by the same amount. Do you think? Why not the same amount? Because we have a disposable value, therefore the cost that will be related to these units will be less. Why? Because we can sell these units by the amount of 230. Therefore, the cost of these spoiled units or normal spoiled units would not be 1,450, but would be 1,450 minus the 230. Therefore, if it is common to all jobs, we need to consider that we have units that can be sold by a disposable or a saleable value. Therefore, these are considered an asset. Of course, we are going to recognize these units by their disposable value, not by their costs. And then the manufacturing overhead account or control, let us say. And then, of course, the work in process should be credited, of course, for the job number 10. The materials control would be 1,610 debited by this amount. The manufacturing overhead control would be debited by the amount of 8,540, and the work in process job number 10 would be credited by the amount of 10,150. Of course, the 10,150 is the 1,450 multiplied by 7. The 8,540 is the 1,450 minus 230 multiplied by 7 units. And the 1,610 is the 230 units multiplied by 7. Any questions? Part C, please.
The spoilage is considered to be abnormal.
Therefore, if it is considered to be abnormal, therefore the cost of the 7 units should be considered as a loss. Therefore, we are going to transfer the cost from the work in process for that specific job, job number 10, onto another account which is considered a loss that will be presented in the income statement as a separate line item. Of course, the loss will not be 10,150. Will not be according to the 1,450. Why? Because we have a disposal value which will decrease the cost of these normal spoiled units. Therefore, as we can see here, it is the same entry, but instead of the manufacturing overhead control, we are going to consider the loss from the abnormal spoilage. Therefore, we are considering that we have units by the amount of, or by the disposal value of 1,610. Of course, loss from abnormal spoilage by the amount of 8,540, and of course work in process specific for job number 10 would be decreased and credited by the amount of 10,150. As we can see here, we transferred the costs of the 7 units onto the loss, but of course, but not by the same amount, because we have a disposal value that will decrease the cost of these spoiled units. Any questions? Problem 1836, please. In problem 1836, we need to consider the same, we are considering the same example or the same question, but in this case we are going to rework the spoiled units. Of course, they gave us that the additional cost to change these defective units into good units, to repair these units, is 1,700. And of course, the first requirement, they said that they need the journal entry if this rework is related to a specific job. If it is related to a specific job, the $1,700 would be loaded onto the work in process for that job. Therefore, work in process for job number 10 would be allocated by the 1,700. Of course, they did not give us any specifications or any classifications of the 1,700. Therefore, we are going to consider the 1,500 from various accounts, because we cannot know the different details. What if the rework is common to all jobs? In this case, we are not going to load these costs onto the work in process, but we are going to load them onto the manufacturing overhead control. And of course to various accounts, because we do not have the details. At the last, if these rework costs or repair costs are considered to be abnormal, therefore we are going to load them onto the loss from abnormal rework. By the same amount, 1,700, 1,700. Okay, we do not have any time. left to continue with problem 1837, but also 1837 considers the accounting for scrap. So we are going, inshallah, to post the or this solution or the solution of this question, inshallah, on the Moodle page. Therefore, try to acquire this solution. Of course, it is a simple solution as we took earlier. Thank you for listening, and inshallah I'll see you the next semester.